Derrick Lewis just picked up his 20th UFC victory, his 16th UFC knockout, and at 40 years young, the Black Beast himself has won 3 of his last 4 bouts, all 3 of those wins by way of knockout, against a veteran, against an in-betweener, and now against an undefeated rising prospect. The guy can still get it done, and he can still show his ass off to the crowd. It took just 35 seconds at the Bridgestone Arena down on Broadway in Nashville, Tennessee for Derrick Lewis to take out Tallison Teixeira and hand him the first loss of his professional career and get his 29th win professionally. And the finishing sequence all started by Derrick Lewis playing possum. That's not the first time we've seen him do it, and it probably won't be the last, as Tallison Teixeira popped him right in his right eye, landed a very stiff shot. That definitely was an impactful blow, but Derrick Lewis said in the aftermath that it wasn't as bad as it looked in the slow-mo replays, and he used that to set up his big counter strikes, land a nasty left hook that put Tallison Teixeira down to the ground. He pounced on him with an insane amount of unanswered, unprotected shots, but I will say that the stoppage was just a little bit weird because I feel like it could have just been stopped a little bit sooner, but instead Jason Herzog let it go a little bit longer. Therefore, Tallison Teixeira was able to make his way back to his feet, and then the fight was stopped. So that was a little weird, but you do have to factor in as well that Tallison Teixeira did not get back to his feet with his own power. He quite literally grabbed the fence, put all of his fingers through it, and yanked himself up with the cage to get up. I don't know if that played a factor in Jason Herzog calling the fight when he did. It was just an awkward sequence, but nevertheless, Derrick Lewis did get another knockout on his resume. He's 3 ahead of the second place all-time Matt Brown in the UFC's history, and in the aftermath of this fight, of course, he set the Bridgestone Arena on fire. He peed on Tallison Teixeira's corner. He took his pants off. He was on the phone with the president. What else did he do? Oh, he had a very romantic call out to his wife.
I want my wife next. It's going to be a lot of ground and pounding. Ground and pounding. She know what it is. Find that.
And a whole lot of people are talking about Derrick Lewis and what could be next for his career at 40, and most of those people are saying, give him Tom Aspinall in a heavyweight title shot. And while Derrick Lewis himself said in the lead up to this fight in Nashville, Tennessee, that he would be open to a championship fight and that he thinks he would fare quite well with Tom Aspinall, which is a discussion for another day, he didn't exactly say or call for that in the aftermath. However, he did call for Waldo Cortez Acosta, who is on a 5 or 6 fight win streak right now, currently sits at number 6 in the heavyweight division. But one problem for Derrick in this call out is that he is currently slated to take on Sergey Pavlovich next month at UFC Shanghai. And that is a massive fight for this heavyweight division because it will be number 6 versus number 3, a rising prospect from the Contender Series versus someone who has challenged for an interim title before in Pavlovich. If Waldo Cortez Acosta can beat Sergey Pavlovich, he's right there in title contention, dare I say a number 1 contender. But I will say that Waldo is no stranger to fighting very frequently. He's been one of the more active fighters on the heavyweight roster as of late, so I could see him with a win over Sergey and definitely with a loss open to fighting Derrick Lewis before the end of the year, and Derrick Lewis said he wanted back in there within the next 2 or 3 months, which does make sense because he took virtually no damage here in these 35 seconds, and prior to this hadn't fought in 14 months. I definitely think we're going to see Derrick again before the end of 2025. It's just a matter and discussion of who that will be. Could it be Waldo Cortez Acosta, win or lose next month? Sure, it definitely could be, but could we realistically see Derrick Lewis get the title fight with Tom Aspinall for his first true title defense? Second, if you ask me technically, though. I don't think it's that out of the realm of possibility, and we've seen crazier title shots given, in my opinion, because Derrick Lewis has won 3 of his last 4 fights. All 3 of those wins are by way of knockout. He's beaten ranked opponents in all of those victories as well. He has a little bit of an argument here to be next for Tom Aspinall, especially considering that many people, including myself, think that Ciryl Gane should have lost to Alexander Volkov at UFC 310, but technically he didn't, so he is coming off of a win, but not a lot of momentum. Volkov is coming off of technically a loss. Pavlovich and Waldo Cortez Acosta are booked. Curtis Blaydes is coming off of a loss to Tom Aspinall last year and has only had 1 fight since, and that was a very close split decision win. Honestly, outside of Derrick Lewis, the only other title contender that I think should be getting it regardless is Jailton Almeida, sitting at number 5, who has won back-to-back fights via stoppage. But seriously, if you look at the state of the division, who's booked, who's been doing what over the last couple of years, Derrick Lewis has an argument to be Tom Aspinall's next opponent, but do you think that's what we're going to see? Let me know down in the comments below. The 27-year-old Gabriel Bonfim picked up the biggest win of his young UFC career so far, improved to 5-1 under the Ultimate Fighting Championships banner, and picked up his third consecutive win, and none bigger than this one over Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, who was the number 12 ranked welterweight coming into this bout, and of course a former two-time title challenger who's fought nothing but the best in this weight class for nearly a decade plus. And while Gabriel Bonfim looked good and had some solid moments here against Wonderboy, 42-year-old Wonderboy looked just as good in my opinion, and maybe should have even gotten the nod in this very close split decision loss for him. Wonderboy was able to fend off a lot of the takedown attempts from Gabriel Bonfim, officially defending 9 out of 14 takedowns from Gabriel Bonfim, and Wonderboy landed 23 more significant strikes throughout the duration of this bout as well, but it seemed as though the 5 minutes and 29 seconds of control time that Gabriel Bonfim racked up in this fight ended up being the difference, specifically in that third and final round and in that final minute, because Wonderboy had landed the huge head kick in that third round that somehow Gabriel just ate like it was a breakfast cereal. But Bonfim was able to grapple up with Thompson, push him up against the fence, and would not let him go for the last minute, and it looks as though the judges weighed that more than the head kick that I just mentioned from Wonderboy. But in my opinion, I think Stephen Thompson should have gotten that third round, which means he should have gotten the nod on the judges' scorecards, because he definitely won round number 2, and round 1 was clearly for Bonfim. But now, unfortunately for Wonderboy, a loss is a loss, meaning he now sees red in 5 of his last 6 bouts, with the only win coming against Kevin Holland at the end of 2022. And this is his third consecutive loss since that victory. Prior to this was a loss to Joaquin Buckley, where he was knocked out in the third round, albeit he was winning that fight up until, and then he lost to Shavkat Rakhmonov as well via submission in round 2 of their bout. But after this fight against someone that was 15 years younger than him, much quicker, much more athletic, it's clear that Stephen Thompson still has plenty left to offer in this welterweight division, and while no, he's not going to find himself standing across from the champion in this division, he can absolutely still compete with young up-and-comers like Bonfim on the outside looking in, and I think can still compete with a lot of the top 15 guys, especially in the back half of this division. And he said leading into this fight in multiple interviews that he had 2 fights left on his current contract, this one and then one more, and then he would love to keep on fighting, but that it would depend on how these 2 fights went. So while yes, he lost here to Bonfim, he still looked damn good in my opinion. Let's see what the UFC decides to do with Wonderboy in his last fight on his current deal, and if we will see that in the last 6 months of 2025 as well. But for Bonfim, who was the winner here, now 5-1 in the UFC as previously mentioned, he will find himself Tuesday morning in the top 15 of the 170-pound on fire welterweight division, and who could be next for the newly ranked contender. At a quick glimpse, I think a fight that would make a lot of sense is someone like a Gilbert Burns at number 10 or a Joaquin Buckley, who currently sits at number 7 but is coming off of a loss to Kamaru Usman and should probably fight back in his next bout. Actually, the more I say it and the more I look at the rankings and think about it in my head, I want to see Joaquin Buckley versus Gabriel Bonfim in a 5-round main event of a fight night next. Steve Garcia may just be one of the most underrated fighters in the entire UFC right now, but he put a lot of people on notice on the main card of UFC Nashville as he picked up his 6th consecutive victory, none bigger than this one over the number 14 ranked featherweight Calvin Kattar, who has been battle tested for years at this point at 145. Garcia is right in his prime at 33 years old, has an 18-5 record overall, with 14 of those 18 wins coming by way of knockout and 5 of them in a row leading into this fight against Calvin Kattar. Now here, his 6th victory in a row. Yes, it wasn't another knockout, but it was a very decisive decision win for him instead over tough, durable Calvin Kattar. He controlled the fight from start to finish, had a knockdown or 2 even that put Calvin Kattar on his rocker, and come Tuesday, much like Bonfim, he will break into the rankings for the first time. Calvin was number 14, so he likely just takes that spot, and if we look ahead, it's David Onama at 13, which would be an absolute banger. It's Dan Ige, who's currently booked. It's Yusuf Zalal, who's coming off of a win against Calvin Kattar. I think those are the types of names that we can look forward to him fighting next. Honestly, he's mentioned David Onama, and being that Onama is now ranked at number 13, I think that would be a sick fight. Onama versus Garcia in a fight night main event, number 13 versus number 14, 2 guys surging with momentum that don't know what a boring fight is. Sign me up. What happens when you see a pirate meet toe-to-toe with a train? Well, in this case, the pirate derails the damn train off the tracks because Morgan Charriere knocked out Nate Landwehr in his home state of Tennessee in the third and final round and just 27 seconds in. But prior to that, we were in for a fight of the night contender. These two were swinging and banging, rock'em sock'em robots for 10 minutes and 27 seconds until one man inevitably had to fall. And in this bout, it was Nate Landwehr as the Frenchman and 29-year-old Morgan Charriere got the biggest win of his career in the toughest, most back-and-forth blood-and-guts fight that he's had through 5 bouts in the UFC as well. He's now 3-2 in the promotion, and while yes, his record isn't pretty, right? 3-2 in the UFC, 21-11 overall, it's clear that he has very high-level skill sets, especially in the striking realm. And I think that he is in for a lot of very fun fights in the future of this 145-pound division, and being the competition that he's already faced through 5 UFC fights, I would think that he just needs one more win before he finds himself standing across from a top 15 featherweight next. So he's definitely someone to keep your eyes on. I just don't want to get my expectations too high because he hasn't yet put together momentum in the UFC, but if he can start to tally together a couple in a row, then we could be on to something for someone that is still just 29 and about to enter his prime. We have a new mythical fighter unlocked for the UFC, and that is heavyweight Vitor Petrino. After losing his last 2 fights down at light heavyweight, both via finish to Dustin Jacoby and Anthony Smith, he bulked up, put on some size, and some quality size at that, because he looked like a brick shithouse in this one, and he destroyed Austen Lane, took him down early, controlled him with ground and pound, and ultimately would get the rear naked choke in 4 minutes and 16 seconds, securing his first UFC heavyweight win and his first win in general since March of last year. He is just 27 years old. He is 12-2 overall, 6'3" and weighed in at 249 pounds. This could be a very fun addition to the heavyweight division that really needs a breath of fresh air, especially from new contenders that aren't quite in the rankings yet, and Vitor could very well be that. He looks good, filled out his frame well, he carries power, he obviously carries jiu-jitsu skills, he may just carry enough tools to make some noise in this heavyweight division. And after this win, yes, it was just against Austen Lane, who hasn't had that much success in the UFC, I could see with his name value and former wins down at light heavyweight pushing him against a top 15 opponent in just his second heavyweight bout. Tuco Tokkos ended his 2-fight win streak and picked up his first UFC victory, and he did that by halting Junior Tafa's light heavyweight debut. And not only did he get the win, but he got the submission via arm triangle in the second round of a fight that he was truly dominating. Yes, he got hit with some good shots from Junior, but nothing that was too detrimental, and he utilized his takedowns to the best of his abilities, and that is what I felt would be the difference in this fight, which is what led me astray from betting on this one, and now I see why, because this could have went either way. I didn't quite understand the betting line, and Tokkos comes out here with the nod as the betting underdog, spoils Tafa's light heavyweight fight, and at 35 years old moves to 11-5 overall and has finished 9 of his 11 victories. And prior to this, those 2 losses in the UFC were to Navajo Sterling and Umar Sy. 2 guys that have had some back and forth moments in the UFC, sure, but do have a lot of potential in a division like light heavyweight, so those losses were nothing to slide at. Tuco Tokkos can still make a little bit of noise before it's too late. Jake Matthews picked up his 3rd consecutive win by ending Chidi and Njokuani's 3-fight win streak, and he did it very convincingly and very quickly as he submitted Chidi. He ran straight toward him, jumped his back, and would not let go until he secured that rear naked choke finish. This was his first finish win, as a matter of fact, since July of 2023, where he submitted Darius Flowers. And he has now won 4 of his last 5 bouts, and he is still just 30 years old. He has been in the UFC dating all the way back to, give me a second, June of 2014, meaning that was over 11 years ago. He's 30 years old. He's been in the damn UFC since he was 19, man. He has a lot of experience in the UFC and is just now in those prime years. 22-7 overall, has finished 14 out of 22 wins. Jake Matthews may just now be hitting his stride, and after this win, because I said leading in that the winner should get a ranked opponent next, well, it looks like Jake Matthews, your call is up. Honestly, it's not crazy to think that his next fight could even be against someone like Stephen Wonderboy Thompson, who is going to be on the same timeline because they fought on the same card and is coming off of a loss and may just be capping out the welterweight ranks at number 15 come Tuesday, if not on the outside of the ranks. The all-time knockout king in the UFC's history is in the heavyweight division in Derrick Lewis, who headlined UFC Nashville, and the heel hook king is also in the heavyweight division, and that belongs to Johnny Walker's brother, Valter, who just picked up his third straight victory, all three of them via first round heel hook. That is a submission that we do not see quite often. As a matter of fact, the most all-time heel hooks in UFC history is 4. Walter Walker's had 3 in his 3 UFC victories. He lost his UFC debut against Lucas Bresky in April of last year and hasn't looked back since. Instead, he's been ripping people's feet off. And him and Kennedy Nzechukwu were definitely entering this fight against one another, fighting to earn a right to face a top 15 opponent next. And it's Walter Walker who comes out on the winning side of things. He now sits at 14-1, has finished 10 out of 14 victories. He's just 27 years old. He's 6'6". He's a behemoth, but not too heavy. He doesn't tip the scales out at 265. He definitely has athleticism to him. And I think much like Vitor Petrino, these two are what this heavyweight division needs right now. Give them both top 15 opponents next, but not each other. Let them fight a couple of times in between, and then maybe they can square off against one another in a couple of years. Give Walter Walker Tallison Teixeira, for crying out loud, who fought on this card. Give him Martin Budai. Give him Rizvan Kuniev. Give him someone in the top 15, and any of those 3 names that he doesn't fight next, give one of them to Vitor Petrino. The 32-year-old beast boy Mike Davis picked up his 5th UFC win, and this time he did it against Mitch Ramirez, where he landed a flying knee and finished him with ground and pound strikes down on the canvas. He is now 12-3 overall, has finished 10 of his 12 victories. The only problem with Mike Davis has been a little bit of inconsistency and inactive stretches. He made his UFC debut in April of 2019 and has only fought 7 times total, so I'd like to see him get a 3rd fight in 2025, and that could solidify some true momentum for him in this lightweight division. And lastly, the Archangel Fatima Kline improved to 8-1 and 2-1 in the UFC and picked up her 5th finish of her professional career with an absolutely vicious left head kick that knocked out Melissa Martinez, followed up by strikes, of course. And this is someone in Kline who just turned 25 on the night that she got this knockout. That is someone to watch out for in this strawweight division. A very fun addition to the 115-pound weight class, and I think after 2 back-to-back finish victories in a row, and considering that her UFC debut was on short notice, up a weight class against Jasmine Jasudavicius, who is currently in the top 10 of the women's flyweight division, she absolutely should be taking on a ranked strawweight next. Let's look at someone like a Denise Gomes, a Loma Luke Boonmia, Tisha Pennington, who's a veteran, maybe even an Angela Hill at number 12. Any of those names make sense, and I think is earned after 2 back-to-back wins and 2 back-to-back dominant performances, capped off by stoppage victories. So that is it for the UFC Nashville recap, and I want to hear from you down in the comments below on what your biggest takeaways are in the aftermath of this card. What do you think is next for Derrick Lewis? Is it a title shot against Tom Aspinall of all people? Or is it one more fight against a top 5 opponent, and then maybe Derrick can get his shot at undisputed gold for a 2nd time and 3rd time gold in general, because let us not forget that interim fight against Ciryl Gane. And give me some of your other thoughts on the biggest performers from this UFC Nashville card as well. I want to hear from you as we head into UFC 318 Fight Week. If you enjoyed this recap, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel if you're new, because every single week I recap the most meaningful results from every card, talk about what is next in the aftermath, and I love doing some matchmaking if you couldn't tell in this one. I also break down and preview the biggest and best fights heading into each card, specifically hitting on all of the storylines and what is at stake for the bout, and I give my thoughts and opinions on MMA news and fight announcements. You can also join the community on social media at Verbal Spar MMA on X, Instagram, and TikTok, as well as like the Facebook page Verbal Sparring MMA, and you can follow on your favorite audio listening platforms such as Spotify and Apple, where every Monday and Friday podcast episodes are released there. Have a great rest of your week, and I will see you all in the next video.